Welcome, everybody. This is a sidebar member-led session on what is potentially the hottest or the coolest topic that is there today. My name is Shubha. I am a fractional chief AI officer and a solopreneur by profession. And I've been a sidebar member for over 2 years. And I'm your moderator and host today. And today we're going to, let's just start off by dropping in the chat. I'd love to know what everybody's up to this summer. Hard to believe it is summer already in 2025. It's going way too fast. Are you traveling? Are you vibe coding? Are you drinking lots of water? You're doing all of the above or none? I know, summer in the Bay Area, right? We have two seasons, hot and hotter. It feels like I'm back in South India, where I'm originally from, which I don't mind. Do you guys want to go and let's just take a moment and drop it in the chat? What option are you all doing right now? I know. I have friends in Boston who are, it's really hot out there, I believe. So absolutely, Guadalupe. Sorry for the guys in the heat wave.
In SF right now, it looks like we're in winter. It rained on the way into the office today.
Oh my gosh, really? Oh, so I see. So that was the reference where is summer in the Bay Area? Oh, so new thing, tutor, working, upgrading my low-code development framework with AI agents. How cool is that? Traveling, Vineet, yes. I just came back from a vacation in Europe myself. If you can believe it, the weather is hotter there than in the Bay Area. So I was glad to be back. Okay, looks like we have some shy folks here. We're not seeing many responses on these. What are you up to this summer? So feel free to put it in, whether you're traveling, vibe coding, drinking lots of water, all of the above, or none of the above, and doing something different, like, what Trudeau mentioned, working with AI agents and upgrading his code development framework, which is awesome. So coming back to kind of what we're here for today, this is potentially, vibe coding is potentially something that I think all of us have heard and seen, and experienced in probably different formats. And we're so excited to host a sidebar session on it. And none other than Kia to kind of like bring it to life and take it to the next level for us. If for the folks who don't know Kia, Kia is amazing. He's an engineer by training, has worked at one of my favorite companies, which is Minted. I used to get all my holiday cards from there, Kia, at one point of time. And then you went to Google and spent close to half of a decade there. And actually on the Google developer platform, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then now you are helping entrepreneurs through your VC firm, 50 years, to really help them leapfrog to that or a greater period of time, which I think is such a worthy mission and something that is important in today's AI world, where I feel like it is hard to see even what is in the next like 3 to 6 months. So I'm thinking, wow, 50 years, how do you actually do that? Kia is also, for all of his experience, is very hands-on and very inspiring for me personally. Every time I speak to Kia, I'm like, I got to go and like get my hands dirty with this. But Kia's here to unpack all of the tricks of the trade and show us the various dimensions of vibe coding. So we'll do that. It's intended to be an interactive discussion. So please post questions in the chat and I'll be moderating and making sure that those questions are answered. We'll also have dedicated time for Q&A at the end of our session. So please don't feel shy. And as with all of our sessions, we really value your feedback so we can get you more programming and content that is relevant for you. So we will take a couple of minutes in the end to really get your NPS feedback on the session. So without any further ado, Kia, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming and listening in. Let me just share my screen real quick.
Wait, let me stop
So
sharing
you can
Kia. Good.
see this, maybe this. Can you guys see the presentation? And then if you guys can do me a favor, just, or Shuba, if you want to let me know when people ask questions, I have a lot of screens open, so keep me in the loop. So
Will do.
yeah, we're here to talk about vibe coding. My name's Kia. And pretty much this is the talk right here. We'll just vibe code and hang out. It's gonna be sweet to be an engineer in the future. But no, I'm joking. So yeah, really the goal of this talk is to figure out how we as engineers, product leaders, entrepreneurs can leverage these tools to build better software, build software faster, and solve our user and team needs. And so a little bit about me. Um, my name's Kia. In my current role, I lead engineering at a VC called 50 Years. 50 Years is a seed stage, deep tech focused VC. So we partner with companies from the earliest stages when it's really just like a founder and an idea. And our kind of thesis or belief about VC in general is like the highest value thing that we can do as a fund is support our founders. And so we're really hands on with our founders, helping them build stuff, unlocking uh, problems for them. And as part of that role, I'm really deeply embedded with a lot of the tech teams across our 100 portfolio companies. And so I get a cool kind of meta view of how all of our companies are using AI and ML tools. I get to understand what's working for us as a firm. And so with this broad view, I've kind of learned some best practices, but it's always changing. And so you guys may feel differently. And so when we get into the Q&A later, please push back and say like, no, you should be doing this or that, because we're a team here. We're always learning. Before 50UI, I was at Google. I was on core developer. I built the application services that undergird all Google development. So everything from like ads to Waymo. If it had a software surface, my team probably touched it. And so also was there for the advent of like the early duckies and bards and the adoption across Google internally. And so got a sense for how that works there. And then before Google, I was founding engineer and VP of engineering at a startup called Radiant out of Atomic VC. And so have gotten really small company all the way to big company. Like was mentioned before, I also worked at Minted before that and built like their online invitations, wedding websites. If you've used any of those things and it was buggy, I'm sorry. For today's talk, we're just going to go over a quick introduction, like talk about the lay of the land, and then we'll jump into the software development lifecycle, talk about how you can use these tools today to get the stuff that you do every day done faster and hopefully better. Towards the end, I'll do a quick demo and see if we can vibe code something together. And then open up to Q&A, maybe share some of my recent hacks that I discovered or fun things that I'm really enjoying. And would love to hear from all of you what's working, what's not working. Um, yeah, really just open discussion, which would be quite fun. So let's get into it. Let me just check. Do I have any questions? Nope. Cool. All right. So it feels like every day there's like a new model coming out or rapid advancement in AI, and it feels like it's directly impacting us in the software industry. Like last week, OpenAI released meeting transcripts, and the whole swath of these meeting bots in this meeting probably are going to be in trouble as vertical integration eats up their niche. And so it feels like it's constantly changing, constantly churning. In a recent survey by GitHub, 92% of software engineers reported that they're using AI tools both in and outside work. So really, these tools are shaping our um, entire industry. It really feels like the capabilities of these tools are blurring the divide between tool and knowledge worker. So like what role do we play as engineers or as product leaders? And so you guys may have heard of vibe coding. It's a pretty ridiculous meme. Um, but in just February of this year, Karpathy released this tweet where he coined vibe coding. And so in this tweet, he says AI tools will allow hobbyists to construct apps and websites. Just let AI take the wheel, and you occasionally steer as a human. And then English or natural language will essentially become the most popular programming language of the future. And for all of us that are like classically trained engineers, you're like, oh my gosh, I just spent years of my life learning all this and all the syntax and how to manage different threads and multi-threaded programming, blah, blah, blah. And now they're saying I'm out of a job. And this has really taken our whole industry by storm. So this was literally, I took this screenshot a month after Karpathy mentioned vibe coding, and it was just like all over YouTube. It's really taken the world by storm. In this Y Combinator video here, which I don't remember when I took, this was probably in April. They said that 90% of the code generated by their latest batch of startups was done by LLMs. And so, as software engineers, like, are we getting obsoleted by all of these AI models? And the answer is no, thankfully. But in a previous version of the talk, I was like, yep, we can just end this talk here and take the rest of the day off. But actually, as we all know, the software dev lifecycle and building products is so much more than just writing code. Solely relying on these tools can be great for rapid prototyping, but it can have major pitfalls as well, like the meme above demonstrates. So I love it when someone new on my team gets really into vibe coding and builds a prototype, and then as soon as they want to add another feature and it breaks, I have to like essentially wrest this purple monster away from them. Um, but optimistically, I like to view the emerging capabilities of these models as increasing the leverage that we have as individuals, and the leverage that we have as engineers. And great software engineering is so much more than code. It's about problem solving, it's about understanding business context. It's about translating user requirements and thinking about systems. AI doesn't really change that. It just simply challenges us to elevate our problem solving to the next level and kind of takes out some of the cruft of our job and allows us to focus on higher leverage things. So let's talk about what these models are probably best at, which is code generation. So there was a GitHub study, I want to say this was in April, where they reported 55% of their developers said they were coding faster. 46% of all the code that was written was done by LLMs, and then 75% of these engineers felt more fulfilled. Um, and what LLMs are really good at is handling boilerplate and repetitive code. Lets us developers focus on harder, more interesting problems. Duolingo did a similar study where they showed a 25% increase in developer velocity after adopting like a simple LLM-based autocomplete. So people like these tools, people feel faster with these tools. And so the onus is on us as entrepreneurs, people trying to stay on the front of the industry, to figure out how these tools work. So there are lots of benefits here. Obviously, when you're not typing 1,000 characters and just tabbing it, it's a lot faster. Um, I personally don't know a bunch of syntax and jump from code base to code base quite frequently. And so these tools are really great. They've been trained on the entire corpus of the internet, all of Stack Overflow. I think the premier models now they're like trained on 13 trillion words, or 13 trillion documents I was hearing yesterday. And so um, they know everything. And so if you ever need syntax help, if you ever need to look up how an API works, as long as the model has been trained, and typically they refresh these at like a quarterly cadence. So it will know everything up to a quarter's based information. And not having to jump out of context a bunch helps you maintain a flow state. So you can just be directly in your editor or in your chat interface and solving the problem directly in line. So here's a really simple example that I did. I just in natural language, I asked, I think this was OpenAI, ChatGPT. A business user wanted me to create a simple 3x3 grid. I don't remember the Tailwind syntax, and so I just asked it in natural language to solve this problem for me. And you can imagine, like in a future state, I could just be like, "Oh yeah, you can do it this way," and I just hand it off to that business user. I won't even need to be in the loop. And so the days of centering divs or worrying about your grid layout are gone. We don't have to worry about those things anymore because the models know those things. So in boilerplate code, things like generating getters and setters, serialization and deserialization, um, writing API clients. Really, like you can defer to these models for the most part. They're up to date. And then we'll talk about some strategies when they're not up to date, how you can get past that. Um, Another really cool use case that I do here is, so yeah, I talked about boilerplate, is going from comment to code. So I'll write in natural language like this function should uh, get all of the resources from this API in parallel. Once they've all resolved, batch them together and like reduce them into this thing for my UI. And the LLM's really good at giving you the first 80% of that so that you can focus on what's really important, which is user experience and performance and things like that. Um, LLMs are super good at AWS, GCP, and Azure. And so frequently when I'm exploring a new API or trying to set up an integration with S3 or SCS, no, SCS is Google, that's not common anymore. Anyways, when I'm integrating with some external system, I typically go to the LM first before jumping into docs. When I'm encountering issues, I will just paste into the context. These context windows are big. Documentation and say like, hey, from this documentation, how do you think I'd solve this problem in my code base? And they're really good at that. So yeah, code generation, probably the premier use case for these tools. But we can even kind of move up the stack. So rapid prototyping, is the bane and blessing of us software engineers right now. But AI is super great at scaffolding a new project. You can just give it a few natural language instructions, and it can create basic classes, functions, configuration files, and give you kind of like that first draft of code, which your coworkers may be like, okay, cool, we're done. Why do we need engineers? But really, that's just like 70% of the way there. As an engineer, you take it, you productionize it. But getting that 70% of the way there saves you a ton of time. And so here up top, I think this is V0. Yeah. Oh no, this one's V0 at the bottom. This one's Replit. There's a lot of tools like this, Bolt, Lovable, where you can essentially describe in natural language the UI that you want to build and just get it immediately. Um, and I will go over an example of this. Fernando asked, did you find less outdated documentation issues since Claude and ChatGPT support web searches? Is this common on your experience? So yeah, it's much better now that both Claude and ChatGPT are agentic, and so they have tools like web search. Occasionally, you have to point it in the right direction, and it will like defer to its internal corpus or whatever it was pre-trained on. But yeah, frequently I'll be like, hey, the documentation is here. Read the entire documentation and create a plan. And so when you get these tools in like planning mode or in agentic mode, they're much better at providing relevant information. That's a great question. Cool. So maybe you all have heard of rubber ducky programming. It's like a practice where you pretend there's a rubber ducky on your desk. Some people actually have physical rubber duckies, and you talk to it and say like, "Hey," or like you explain to it in basic language, like, "Do this," and you imagine the rubber ducky asking you questions back. And so I treat my LLMs like my rubber ducky. So you can think about it like in traditional pair programming, two developers work together at one workstation, brainstorming and reviewing each other's code in real time. With an LLM, you have that coworker. It's always available. It's always willing to answer your questions and dumb things down or make things more intelligent based on your level. When I'm up late at night coding at 3 a.m. in the darkness, I imagine my coworkers would hate it if I was pinging them. Instead, having an LLM to be there really helps. And just like a friend who may be an expert in a system, like it reduces your cognitive load if you can quickly ask someone for a solution. And so I pair program with, uh, yeah, I love that Guadalupe, so cute. I pair program with my rubber ducky LLM all the time. There are some pitfalls in this approach, right? If you overly rely on, or you just kind of blindly follow what the LLMs say, your skills can atrophy. So my kind of mantra is trust but verify. Look at what it's saying, understand the premise of what it's saying, think critically about it, and then implement. Um, because you as a user, one, you have more experience on like your actual system and the business context. And so your bigger picture understanding, they may give you something that's like semantically correct or um, correct based on the context that the tool knows. But you really provide that human intuition, context, and big picture understanding that can take the boilerplate that they generate and apply it to your use case. So really like when I'm integrating with these tools, I really strive to comprehend. and improve the code. Every time code generates a bug, one of these tools generates a bug, I give it feedback and also give myself feedback. So it can develop skills, and then I can continue to like develop my skills. The kind of next generation above, which Fernando hinted on earlier, is kind of agentic coders. And so Codex is a good example. Do you guys see Codex? Yeah, cool. So here, I said I provided essentially a spec in code. We have this tool that cleans people's names when we're ingesting them. People, like the primitives in VC are names, or sorry, people, ideas, I guess capital and support. And so we're always ingesting big data sets of people. And so here I just provided essentially some of the problems I was running into, and then had Codex agentically go off and implement the code for me. And so I gave it a spec from Linear, and then it just, I think I even GPT generated the spec based on some initial examples. And then I just had it generate this code for me. And then I created a PR. Let's see what we actually did on GitHub. So I created an initial PR. I used Copilot to review the PR, which feels very meta. Gave back some feedback. My coworker gave back some additional feedback. And I took this branch that it generated it on, updated it, modified it. Eventually, um, we merged it. But the kind of really cool takeaway here is I pasted this in before I went to the gym in the morning, and then came back, and this PR was there. And so like it really opens up a whole world of possibilities. Um, a couple of quick questions. So how real is skill atrophy problem when using LLMs for complex systems? I mean, I'd say it's pretty real. As a One, these LLMs have amnesia. Like Karpathy described them last week as like the lady in 51st States, or the person from Memento, um, where like they forget every new session. And so if you're not careful, they're just essentially doing the same thing over and over again. And if you become overly reliant on these systems, you're just going to get stuck. You're eventually going to end up at local maxima and unable to recover to that global maxima that you want for your system. And so I alternate between like writing code myself or writing that first draft myself. And then I kind of treat LLM generated code as like at Google, what I would review from like a junior colleague. And so I use that to keep my skills fresh. And I pretty much just like interrogate these outputs similar to how I'd interrogate. Interrogate's a strong word, but I would validate the ideas of my coworkers.
Quick, quick
Go
follow-up
ahead.
on that, Kia.
Yeah.
So in order to ask the right questions, I would
Yeah.
need to know enough, right? So is that
Yep.
also a risk, like over time, let's say folks end up using LLMs and rely quite a bit on them? And then I'm speaking mostly for the perspective of, let's say, a junior programmer joining my
Yeah.
team who may end up using LLMs quite frequently, but then
Mhm.
they don't get the broader picture or complexity or aspects of efficiency or optimization, all of those things. They may not really be able to get into the depths of it. Do you think that's
Yeah.
probably
I
going
think
to?
that's a huge problem.
Okay.
Like Adi Osmani talks about the junior developer gap,
Yeah.
where AI native people who haven't been in the industry for 10 plus years and face these problems and know kind of the pitfalls you encounter when you're writing code.
Mhm.
How do they ramp up? How do they learn if they get hooked on this dopamine cycle of I just type in natural language and there's an output? And so I think that is a big problem.
Mhm.
And if you
Mhm.
think about organizationally, like a Google or even a startup, like if they can hire one senior engineer and they can orchestrate tens or hundreds of these agents, why do they want junior engineers? So I think as an industry, this is a really interesting problem that's occurring. I guess the way that I think about it is like on our team, training junior engineers, knowledge transfer from me to them. Eventually, like right now, the rate limit is my ability to review and read all the generated code by these agents in my team. And
Mhm.
so I invest in training up junior engineers so that they understand the things that I know, and so they can better evaluate the code that comes out of this. Um, And then I encourage them to struggle, not rely on these tools, to project forward, like, how do I think I want to solve this? And what are the potential issues that an LLM may generate? And so it's kind of this new mindset where you're like A/B testing your code versus the LLM generated code.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've totally seen it where people just vibe up a solution, and then I ask them like, "Hey, what does this section of the code do?" And they
Right.
have no freaking idea. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, interviewing
I've
engineers
seen
is really. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I've seen many of those where I work as well. So totally
Yeah,
aligned with that.
the whole like software engineer interview process is totally broken now because like in my day to
Mm,
day, I don't care if someone can write a for loop or reverse a linked list because an LLM can do that in sleep, right? If it sleeps.
right.
But I really care, like, do these people understand what their code's doing, why their code is structured that way? If I find subtle issues, like, do they understand the debug cycle, and do they know how to ingest and understand a code at a higher level? Becomes more and more important. So, like, as us, it's weird to describe myself as a old timer, but as us people who had to actually write characters at one point, we've struggled, and we can look at like a whiteboard solution and know how it'll perform.
Right.
And that learning isn't as naturally reinforced anymore. So creating structures that inform that, I think, will be more and more beneficial. There are a ton of these agentic coders. There's Gemini CLI, like someone just mentioned. There's Jules. There's Devin, which we've used. There's Codex, which is here. There's Claude Code. There's agentic Klein and agentic Copilot. Yesterday, I spun up a bunch of Dagger containers and had like 5 different agents running on my machine. And so these tools are rapidly evolving and changing. They're super powerful, though. When you think about using these tools, again, like that amnesia problem is something to think about. And so providing a bunch of context initially really helps. And we can talk about that later. So most of the Premiere tools have like a markdown file that can inform how all new instances of these agents think and work. And so like Claude has a Claude MD. I think Codex is using an agents.md. I think Google is also using an agents.md, so maybe Claude MD will die and it will become agents.md. Um, and so those are good ways that you can train up these systems so that you're not having your first state over and over and over again. But we can talk about that in a second. Um,
There is
yeah,
also Chris Brown who sent the link to this open source Gemini CLI model
mm,
launched today. Uh,
yeah,
and I think he shares your perspective on how developers are unable to kind of like comprehend what they're actually building and writing
yeah.
code for. Chris, did you have a question in that you want to jump in and ask Kia?
Not so much as a question, but definitely have experienced that. My previous company, we were using AI assistants since
Mhm.
GitHub Copilot launched over a year ago, and largely we had an expectation that engineers use AI. We were definitely AI forward,
Mhm.
but over time we had some concerns raised by particularly principal staff engineers that some of the junior mid-level engineers were merging in code that had been produced through AI, and when they had been asked or received comments on their pull requests, didn't know exactly how the code was working, which raised
Mhm.
concerns about what was going into production environments.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I've also experienced that. My intern's on the call, and he may have done that yesterday. But uh, what uh, what I typically do is say things like, "Hey, explain what this code is doing to me, and why'd you make this choice?" Um, and just reinforce like coding, pull requests, um, shipping systems is really just about organizational learning. And so just enforcing that they're getting the necessary learning has helped for me. That being said, like these models are really great at generating things that seem they're sycophantic, right? They want you to like what they tell you. And so they're super great at generating things that appear real. You have to be careful. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second.
Yeah.
Something
So
I
And
back to,
on that,
oh, good.
Zay had a quick question for you. Kia,
Yeah.
do you prefer Codex or Claude?
Honestly, I really like Claude. Right now, at least as of this week, the dollar to token ratio in Claude code is probably the best if you're at the max Max 200 subscription. Codex also is really great. It's I mean, this changes. This is like a question that will change every week, but Codex still is in this like research preview, and so they're not charging per token. And so I'm abusing Codex for simple agentic things like generating unit tests or documenting how something works. Whereas like Devin ACU cost is quite high. And so before Codex, I was using Devin for, I was like spinning up like 10 Devins. It's off to go do a bunch of things. And yeah, you can rack up some costs there. And so yeah, you just have to be cost cognizant. Performance, I would look at some of the leaderboards, which I'll link to in a second, to see how things do. Like yesterday or this morning, there was Warp that just came out as another kind of agentic coding environment that I I'm gonna mess around with today and see how that performs. Really like here, I'll just do it. See on this. What's it called? SWE bench or hold on,
As
leaderboard.
you're pulling this up, Chris has also
Yeah.
responded to Z's email note saying he also prefers Claude. So Claude seems to be pretty popular in the developer
Yeah,
community.
Claude's pretty great. Let me show you the leaderboard. So I'm constantly looking at these leaderboards and saying like, okay, what's the best in web dev? If that's what I'm doing, maybe I'll consider using this model. What kind of performance do I get from various systems? And you can see what's good at what. Looks like Perplexity. This Gemini Pro grounding, I haven't messed around with, but like this Pro preview, you only get as a researcher, and so that may not be accessible. So I'd see what works within the constraints of your organization. And I typically reference these things. It looks like, where's Claude on this? Uh-oh, is Claude losing? Oh no, yeah, Opus is up here. Cool. So Opus is number 6 overall as of today, but I think when I looked on Saturday, it was number 3. These things are always changing. I wouldn't blindly trust these leaderboards either, because like they've exfiltrated from like OpenAI that they have like leaderboard questions in their corpus, and so in their training set, and so people are gaming this. It's constantly changing. um but yeah, uh, yeah, so take this with a grain of salt, but it's a helpful way to like level set yourself. I
Makes sense.
agree that Claude's token limit is restricting, especially in Sonnet. But their compaction algorithm in Claude Code, where they take the previous conversation and compress it into this like semantically meaningful context, is quite impressive. And so realistically, they extend the context that way. But sorry, that's a side note. So back to the presentation. Oh, sorry, were there more questions that I didn't
Yeah, there is a
answer?
question from
Yeah.
Angad regarding bugs. Angad, do you want to ask the question? Want to come up?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm curious how many times have you had to revert to a previous PR, even after like a PR review and kind of ChatGPT co-piloting sort of PRs?
I mean, probably about the same when I was writing my code myself. um, Realistically, I'd say not that often. We have a pretty rigorous code review process here at 50 Years, and we did at Google. Like tests are essential. Like I expect all my engineers to understand the code they're writing and be able to describe to me why they're doing these choices. So that's the way we catch most of these things. We'll talk about some of the testing pitfalls when you're relying on these tools for testing, because there are some. But um, yeah, I'd say it's standard, right? Like if you have a junior engineer on their team, they're gonna wipe your production database every so often, like on Monday this week. Ilya. No, I'm joking. But actually, and so that stuff will happen, just like it would with a junior teammate. You just have to be careful that you're not codifying the mistakes and extending on the mistakes. So having systems around the code you're writing to catch those things really helps. Does that sort of answer your question? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So these are some of the tools. We talked about editors that do code completion, Cursor, Windsurf, VS Code. This is all changing actually. I feel like I updated this on the weekend and there's new stuff. End-to-end app creation, like I showed before, Replit, Lovable, Bolt.new. Oh, I misspelled comfy. Sorry about that. Should have had an LM write this. And there's a bunch of editor integrations. Copilot, Windsurf, JetBrains has JetBrains Air, I think. I haven't been on the JetBrains ecosystem since Google, so I'm a little outdated there. Klein, Tab9, Claude Code should probably be here. because it integrates directly into VS Code and other editors. And then fully agentic coders, Devin, SWE agent. Factory has a really cool one that Dropbox is stocked by 20%, or sorry, DocuSign's stocked by 20% when it built DocuSign in 19 minutes a couple weeks ago. Codex that I showed, Julia, Warp, which was released this morning, or Warp 2.0 was released this morning. Claude Code. Yeah, this was, what day is it today? This was yesterday. So I'm going to mess around with this today, just for fun. But yeah, so it's rapidly changing. So this slide is going to be useless in like a couple hours, but really the principles behind these tools and the overlying structures are going to continue to be relevant. And so dip your toes in, try them out. I think it's a race to a bottom with a lot of these things for these companies. And so just getting familiar with one, or whatever wins the ecosystem, will set you up so that you can continue to stay relevant. But yeah, that's these tools. Let's talk about debugging. So these generative pre-trained transformers, they've been trained on the entire corpus of the internet. And so they have everything, Stack Overflow, documentation inside of that. And so,
Hey, Kia,
yeah.
on the previous slide where you had the tool ecosystem, could you just talk a little to the use cases when it is only editor only versus end-to-end app creation versus agentic coders versus editor integrations, as to when would I maybe go to Lovable versus Windsurf versus Copilot versus Julia? I mean, is there a way to think about which tool to use when?
Yeah, actually, I think it's Jules, maybe. Julia was maybe the internal name. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, it really depends on your use case. If you just want to set and forget, like end-to-end app creation could be great for prototyping. This is like when building UIs, these tools are quite good at that. Editors and editor integrations are probably like the meat and potatoes, the surfaces I live in every day as an engineer. And they shift kind of on the scale of like fully agentic, fully AI first. Things like Cursor and Windsurf are probably more on the prompt forward approach, whereas like VS Code plus Copilot is more traditional. You have more control, so that's what I lean towards. Editor integrations are helpful if you like your workflow and you just want to plug one of these models or tools in. And so like when I was dipping my toes into this ecosystem, I really like Climb because it's like a load balancer, not a load balancer, sorry, it's like a facade on top of a bunch of models. And so I was just testing different models and different backends. I can show you guys a little bit what that looks like. And then agentic coders are when you don't want to drive and it's something simple, like writing a unit test, updating documentation. They're getting better and better. But yeah, simple tasks like yesterday, I'll pull up Codex. Yesterday, I got a security alert from GitHub that I need to update my URL lib version. And so this is the kind of stuff that you can just, instead of having to go in and pip install and verify, you can just have one of these models created there for you. So agentic coders are quite helpful for that kind of stuff. Just saving me time so that I don't have to care about meaningless stuff. Not meaningless, but like trivial stuff. So yeah, back to, sorry, did that answer your question? Any more questions?
No, that was helpful. Thank you.
Oh, cool. And if you have further questions and you're considering adopting these things, I'm on Sidebar. I'll give you guys my contact information. I've helped a lot of companies adopt these things, so always happy to help and find out what's working for you guys, because we're all a team trying to keep up to date with our robot overlords. But
And
yeah,
I love how real time this is, Kia. This is amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, this what was I saying? Yeah, so for debugging, these tools are super helpful. Occasionally I'll just paste a stack trace into GPT and be like, hey, what do you think is happening based on the context you have on my code or on Claude Code? And it's helpful to get it there. There are tools like Flip, which takes observability metrics and finds like a root cause analysis. Snick or Snag, I don't actually know how to say this in real world, can scan your code base using LLMs to detect bugs or security issues. Foam is like an agentic Sentry issue to issue resolution. There's other tools like, I was talking to a YC company. There's like 10 YC companies that are doing all of these things. So there's lots of these tools. These ecosystems are changing. But having a little agent or system monitoring potential issues in your code base is really helpful. Like all of this was built in at Google, but now with the prevalence of these tools in the open source ecosystem, like anybody can have all these powers, which is quite cool. And anything else I wanted to call out here? No, that's fine. Any questions about these sorts of, it's pronounced sneak. Thanks, Chris, appreciate it. Any other questions?
There is a
People,
question on how far you're able to get with the end-to-end app creator tools like Bolt,
yeah.
Lovable. So maybe
In a little bit, or later in this interview, I'll show you guys. I just like pasted in a my sidebar screenshot, and I was like, "Hey, build this UI," and then I built it, or I had it like essentially give me a UI. You can see here in the code. Oh, I can need to move something. Let me move this over here. No, sorry, Zoom is getting in the way of my ability to click stuff. But you can see here. Where did this go? So I'll make this full screen for a second. Sorry. Here. So you can see like this will generate an app that's literally it took my screenshot and even my like conversation with Lexi and put it in there. And so yeah, it's pretty creepy. But this stuff is just a scaffold, a prototype. And so you typically have to take this, use like an agentic coder or your code base and use this kind of as like the first 50% in this case for more complex things. But yeah, maybe if we have, I'm talking too much, but if we have time, I'll show you guys taking this to an app that you can integrate with a database. So I set up a database earlier with some channels, messages, and if we have time, I'll show you guys kind of what that workflow is like.
I think I'd love to see that. Maybe we can pause questions until the end, further questions, so we can actually see it, Kia. That'd be great.
These questions are great though, and I'd rather, yeah, whatever you guys want. Let's talk about test maintenance really quickly. Sorry, my windows got all around. So testing, like I mentioned, is critical in software, especially when AI could potentially be generating a lot of slop for you. So AI kind of raises the bar for how much tests and how quickly you can write our test code. And so here's an example of test generation where I described well, this was really lazy actually what I did here. I was just like, hey, look at this code and add unit tests. It's probably a bad idea. I don't want to do that. But it's super helpful for like kind of initially generating the tests that you want. But the kind of pitfall here is it's just describing the code as is. It has no context about how this code should really function in the larger ecosystem or like kind of within the code base or in the business context. And so it writes great tests for the semantic understanding and that might get like 100% code coverage, but that's not always what you want. And so I typically take these and prune them to get kind of a useful subset of the tests. But yeah, the kind of boilerplate test scaffolding and writing unit tests, a lot of that can be automated. But yeah, like I mentioned, it's just semantic understanding of your code and whatever context you provide. And so the AI will know how the code works, but not necessarily what the code should do. It will occasionally generate like really trivial, redundant tests. A human tester might be able to like fully test some functionality with one or two meaningful tests per scenario. And AI will just kind of like brute force it. Really test what is written, it will give you a false sense of security. And then we all know that all code is legacy code. And so as soon as you write a unit test, it's maintenance burden for you and your team. And so this is double-edged sword. Like if you're generating 1,000 tests, it's gonna be a pain in the butt to manage that. And so yeah, I'd say get yourself where you need to go, Pareto principle, and go from there. We talked a little bit about code scanning. But yeah, there's tools that can find security vulnerabilities, copyright issues. They'll do static analysis for you, linking and continuous integration. Sneak apparently is how you pronounce it. Thank you. And Code Guru are good examples of this. There are a bunch more. Yeah, I was talking to a company last week that's doing this too. Yeah, there's lots of, you'll find these tools. Just shop around for whatever has the cheapest credits, is my opinion. Let's talk about ops. Honestly, this could be a whole presentation, but I'll just quickly go through some of the use cases. Things like pull requests, there's so many tools, Ellipsis, CodeRabbit, Greptile, Copilot, Swim. This is an example of Ellipsis, where it auto generates a PR message based on the code I wrote, and then allows code reviewers to get kind of a quick ramp up on what's actually happening, and focus on kind of the meaningful things like performance, architecture, blah, blah, blah. It will also do code review. I can't move Zoom anymore. Zoom is very upset at me. Where like here it said, you're not handling errors. So this is bad. In this case, I told the model it was wrong, but it's a quick like sanity check where you can let your actual human reviewers focus on important things instead of just like nits, like these things are great at. I would say if you're doing this, like use here's Copilot. If you use Copilot, it's like I think it's baked in for free, maybe not. I purchased a lot of these things, but this is built into GitHub. So if you guys are using GitHub, I would encourage you to just turn on Copilot. You can just request it just like you would a normal reviewer, and try this out, see if it's useful. Sometimes it gives you like really useless nits that I just ignore. But for the most part, it's quite helpful as like a first pass. And then you have your coworker or teammate like focus on the important stuff. So yeah, that's it about Purview. There's tons of these tools. So yeah, mess around with them. Documentation. Generating and maintaining documentation is typically an afterthought when you're writing code. But with these models, they can understand the code as written. They can constantly update them really quickly. And so you can build up quickly like a knowledge base. So actually, a really cool example of this is Devin, where this project I'm showing is open source. So where's the wiki? So it will generate like a wiki for your code base. This is so awesome, where it'll say like, here's what the system architecture looks like. Here's the purpose. Here is how the user interface is set up. Here's our authentication. And so this is awesome in that it's constantly indexing my code base, and I can hand this off to a junior developer that can get ramped up quickly. Whereas before, I would be manually writing these things if I remembered. And so, yeah, these tools are awesome for this. They have the whole context of your code base and kind of can directly link and understand where things are, which is quite cool. But one of the hardest things in software engineering is maintaining like up-to-date documentation. So I would caution you for going like 1,000% on this, because docs are always out of date. I'd only pick like the high leverage things. And then as a engineer, like ramping up and understanding a new code base, it's super helpful to have these tools available, have the context so that I can just ask the questions like, hey, I want to add token-based auth to this API method. Like, how are we doing this in this code base? And it will provide kind of guidance there, how the authentication system's set up. Bug reporting. This is Loom here. Man, the screenshot's small, I apologize. Where I recorded a bug that I saw in the production issue. AI generates a description based on the transcript and then directly integrates into my task management system. So it's quite helpful. Like, this is kind of boring things that we would have to do as engineers or as QA engineers. You can automate a lot of this with things like steps to reproduce, acceptance criteria. Like, this is probably the most nuanced bug report I've ever had. Whereas like typically I'm pretty lazy. I'm like, it breaks. No, I'm joking. But yeah, teammates can be lazy. The AI can do the legwork for you. And then lastly is a thought partner. So we talked about rubber ducky pair programming, but I frequently use AI as my first person to ask questions or bounce ideas off of, so that I can refine my thoughts, test them against what the LLM knows, and then bring it up so I can have kind of more focused and intentional conversations with my teammates. These things are always available, super helpful, and yeah, would recommend. I do have demo time, but I'll just quickly talk about what I did, and then I really want to leave time open for your questions and discussion. But I'll record the demo on Loom and just post it in Sidebar so you guys can all see later. But yeah, let's talk quickly about the demo I was going to do. So I came to Sidebar and I just copy pasted this. I went to V0. Where is that? I have too many tabs. And I said, generate a UI that looks like this screenshot. And so it's like, I'll generate a Discord-like messaging interface, blah, 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 blah. and it analyzed the UI, and it gave me, you can see here, version 1 of this. So this was V1. And then I looked at the code and I was like, oh, this isn't exactly what I want. It's not using my underlying infrastructure. So I said, how can I add this to my existing Next.js app? It gave me some recommendations. I ended up doing the manual installation here. And so where did it go? I'm going to just share my full screen real quick so you guys can just see how I'm tabbing through stuff. Let me do that. Ooh, maybe I broke it. Share screen. Just ignore your faces for a second. So then I use those instructions. I set up, I essentially just pasted these components, ran the commands. I have this chat interface. I wonder if it's working or running, actually. I may have broken it like in the 2 minutes before this. No, here it is. So here it is live. The next thing I would probably do in this live demo is show you how I'd rig it up to this database. But we have 8 minutes. I'd rather have your guys' questions than that, but I will record a video. So yeah, you guys can see my chats with Lexi in real time. Okay, back to the slides. Before we jump to questions, like this stuff is changing super, super quickly all the time. And so like as a software engineer, our daily routine is just changing. And so AI is becoming more and more like typing, electricity. It's going to become integral to everything we do across every job role. And so the next 5 years are going to be really interesting. What is it going to look like as a software engineer? I personally think we're going to integrate more closely with these models and these tools. And a lot of the tools will be seamlessly integrated into the surface that we're using. I mean, we're already seeing this. And I think we're on the brink of this kind of new era of software development where we'll be AI augmented until we're AI deprecated, but that's another talk. But what are our durable skills as engineers? Really, like I mentioned before, system design, architectural thinking, designing a coherent system, understanding trade-offs, constraints, the big picture for the business or the user. This is going to continue to be more and more relevant as models get a lot of the mechanical road stuff out of the way. Handling the edge cases, ambiguity is kind of an extension of that. Real world software breaks. There's always oddball scenarios. Users are always doing weird things with your app. And so AI can solve the general case. It's your expertise that's going to take that general case and apply it directly to your context. Like we were discussing before, code review, quality assurance, code understanding, code reading. AI is going to generate a ton of code and make it really easy, but that code is going to inevitably break. Who's going to debug it? Who's going to jump into the source code and fix it? That's going to be us engineers. And so understanding code, reading code, is going to be more and more and more important until we get Neuralink, and then we can just ingest the code base in our brains. Debugging, problem solving is kind of an extension of that. Software is not going to work how you expect ever. And so your role as an engineer is figuring out why it's breaking, how to fix it. And then the kind of fluffy stuff is still important. Communication, collaboration, working with your cross-functional partners, working with your users. Building software is frankly a team sport. And your ability to be that intermediary between the business or your users and the code base and the users using that code base, like you're that glue as an engineer. And so these tools really just increase your leverage and ability to serve that glue more efficiently. Lastly, like I kind of alluded to, this stuff is changing so quickly. And so always learning, being willing to experiment is just going to be more and more and more important. And so I'd focus on adaptability, continuous learning. As engineers, really focusing on like the first principles things, like why do GPTs work the way they work? Why is it token by token? How do some of the tools around these things work, like RAG or A2A? Those sorts of principles and that kind of understanding will continue to be important as you're orchestrating these things and you're implementing these stochastic models in your software interfaces. And that will probably be another talk, or we can talk about it. Yeah, sorry I blabbered on so much. Please stay in touch, and I'd love to hear all of your questions.
I think this is, we should get you back to, do more of a deeper dive discussion. I see some questions here, but this is also great topics. It looks like code review is overall is a big topic in general. Chris has posted a couple of resources, GitHub Galaxy, Another AI code review tool, diamond.graphite.dev. I mean, just overall,
Yeah,
is
I've heard good
that a
things.
big pain point? That
I mean,
so.
that is, if we think about like the long poles in software development now, code review is one of them, right? So I can spin up 100 agents to do 100 things, but someone has to integrate that. Like we now, this is a weird way to think about it, but we are the reduce and a map reduce. And so like all of these agents are off doing things, and it's our role to integrate that into a coherent system. And so yeah, code review is necessarily becoming more important. I kind of view my job now as an orchestrator, where it's either people or machines. I tell them what to do, and then I have to figure out like, does this actually do the thing that I want? Um, and so, yeah, code review is a big part of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like that's
Um,
all about efficiency. And so just like with testing, that was probably the first thing that AI code assistants were really leveraged on was writing tests because it's a very kind of boring, time intensive work, but it's
Yeah.
important. And same with code reviews. If we can have an AI assistant go through and do the first pass, find all
Mhm.
all the issues, and then the human reviewer go through and kind of confirm or spend significantly less time so they can get back to writing or orchestrating
Yep.
more features.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree. Um, yeah, these stochastic systems are really great at generalizing too. And so the work to build a lot of these tools and systems is a lot easier. And so like I've spent a good amount of time now building uh, LLM based or agentic tooling to like increase my leverage. But that's probably again is another talk. Happy to discuss about that stuff.
There is an interesting product management related question on how
Mhm.
vibe coding can actually be used for product management tasks. And I love
Yeah.
these conversations where they're trying to kind of like resolve this in the discussion thread itself. So, Chris, thank you for posting the links to the previous AI powered product management session. But Vineet,
Mhm.
with all this information now, is there another question that you want to ask Kia?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, that was useful. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to give you kind of my thoughts on this, because just as I'm accelerating, my product partner is accelerating too. The tools that we use are like ChatPRD, Claude. Um, this is a crazy example. Let me find it real quick. The other day we took a product spec. Let me see if I can find this paper scraper. Yeah. We took a PRD that my coworker wrote, and then we wrote a design doc based on that. Hopefully, you guys can see. And then I set up an MCP that integrates with our task management system. And I said, open this doc, break it down into individual engineering tasks that a junior engineer can complete, and then populate. Oh, I can't even type, but it understood me apparently. Populate this linear project with these tasks. And so it actually went through, got my linear project, read the entire doc, um, and then broke it down into individual issues uh, that I just handed off. And so, yeah, it created like 21 issues, acceptance criteria, things like that. And so, imagine like you can imagine how this applies to the role of a product manager, where all the boilerplate stuff that you may have been writing, you can apply directly to this. And you can see this broke it down into my timeline, into the tasks that I wanted. And this is what someone on our team is working on this week. We're on week 2. And so, again, like trust but verify, some of these things are wrong. Like it assumed we needed to create a new Postgres database when we already had one. And so if you're blindly following these things and not adapting them, it can be problematic. But with guidance, this can be really, really, really helpful and useful. Yeah, I use MCPs for all sorts of stuff. So can I show you guys? Like just in Claude alone, I have an MCP for our internal CRM where in natural language, I can say like, what do we know about Kia? I have one for our database. I have one for our task management system. I have one that's a RAG on top of um, uh, descriptions and like dossiers of like a couple thousand people that we constantly need to look up. So I could say like, who's an expert in GTM in our portfolio companies, and we'll find like the top 5 hits. And so, um, yeah, anyways, what I'm saying is like the things that we used to spend a lot of time on doing research and stuff like that, like the distance between uh idea and like comprehensive summary, and the distance between idea and implementation is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it behooves us as engineers, as product leaders, to figure out how we can just increase our leverage.
That's pretty cool. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Maybe I want to get your thoughts on the future for tools like, I guess, Cursor, or not Cursor, Lovable, Bolt, compared to say Cursor or VS Code, right? Paired with either Codex or Cloud. The reason I'm asking is, even for Lovable and other tools like Cursor, right? Their cost is increasing as the number of tokens been kind of pushed through the system. Then the company that actually owns the LLM, right, benefit the most will be the cloud, the ChatGPTs, the actual model builders. Do you see like a world where the Lovable and such will essentially become more expensive, and where the LLM actually builders actually move into that space and essentially taking over that market?
Yeah, I think there's definitely vertical integration risk from these big players, these big labs. Like OpenAI said, yes, this morning I was reading that they're building a Google Docs competitor. And so I think their goal, their incentive as these kind of premier LLM providers is to gather as much data and as much context to produce AGI. And so they're going to want to be everywhere that you live. That's why they partnered with IO and Johnny Ive, so that now they'll just be on your little shoulder in a pin all the time or listening in. And so one of the big limits in scaling these models is high quality data. And so they're incentivized to just sprawl out or go deep on specific things. And so that being said, there are tons of competitors in the space, and they're all every week trying to one up each other. And so my personal, again, I can't predict the future, but my personal hypothesis is that the cost per token is just going to continue to go down, 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 down. And so equivalently, like, these tools will get cheaper with time if they survive. As for you to ask,
Gotcha.
like, your question was like, which of these tools should I use? What should I invest in? I would just test them out, see what works in your use case. It is so cheap, relatively. Like Claude, $200 a month compared to a Google software engineer's salary is base salary is like 1/100th. So like, oh no, sorry, that's wrong. 2,400. Yeah, it's about like 1/100th. So like, it is super cheap to experiment with these things. And a lot of them give generous free tiers. Find what works for you. But be adaptable. Don't get too hooked on one of these ecosystems, because they could be gone tomorrow or supplanted by a better offering.
Thank you.
Oh crap, we're 4 minutes over. Guys, I'm so sorry. I want to keep answering your questions, but ping me on Slack, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Not Slack, sorry, Sidebar. Want to hear what's working for you guys and how I can be of service to you guys. So please let me know.
Kia, thank you so much. This was amazing. And as I mentioned, I think we've just given birth to 2 or 3 more new topics that we need to kind of like bring you back for. And